everybody. It's Heather with the Leadership with Heart podcast. And I am so tickled today to have someone who I consider a friend and someone who's been with us on this journey on the Leadership with Heart podcast for a while. And that's Barbara Lovejoy. And I have her on here. She's now been in multiple of the different calls and communities that I've started for other people to have safe spaces to just talk about things that are on their mind and learn from each other. And I've just a quiet presence, but when she speaks, it's like, wow, like that's huge. So I knew she'd bring a lot of value to you all coming on as now a longtime listener of the show and now as a guest. So it's super exciting. So welcome, Barbara.
Well, thank you. I am so excited to be here, Heather, and honored, flattered. And as you had said, I have been listening to your podcast for a long time, probably a year and a half. And just really, again, just honored to be able to talk with you today and be a part of the community. It's an incredible resource. So I'm happy to share my experiences with the audience.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome. So she's talking about that caring leadership community that we talk about, the caringleadership.co and all the different resources that are available there. But there's these calls that we started so that now we have this static community where you can go and kind of interact there. But then it's this idea of seeing each other on the screen and developing relationships. So that's what Barbara's talking about now, is having the ability to go do that. So we'll dive into that in a little bit, because I think it'll come back around with some of the things we talk about anyway. Right. So for those who are listening, where are you anyway right now in your leadership journey?
So right now I currently am working for a telecommunications company. So I've been with this organization for about 7 months, 7.5 months, and I currently serve as the Director of Human Resources. So although I haven't been in this organization long, I have been in HR for a really long time, probably more years than I really care to admit to, a couple of decades. So I try to make it feels better to me if I just say 2 decades as opposed to 20 years. And I've had the opportunity to serve in multiple different roles, but really have found what I consider to be my passion and my niche, especially having the opportunity to work at a director level, and really excited to be a part of my current organization. We are going through a merger of adding 5 companies and melding into one. So we've got a lot of exciting things happening, a lot of initiatives that we're working on, and there's a whole lot of synergy that's happening here. So I'm really enjoying it so far, and love my team and the people that I work with and the leaders here.
So going into HR, because number one, it's just it's so hard to be in human resources. You guys get a bum rap, number one. You're really all mostly all heart-centered leaders, but just get a bum rap, and really sometimes even get stuck in doing certain roles and doing certain things where it doesn't call in your heart as much. I'm curious to know where your drive to lead, particularly lead in the HR space, comes from.
That's a really great question, Heather. And as I think about that, I do think that to some degree, I do think it's a little innate. I do firmly believe that leaders can be grown, but I think that there has to some degree, be a little bit of an underlying something there, flame there, desire there. And I have always loved people, just as a kid. And I really have found over the years that I really get my fulfillment serving in this role based off from the energy that I'm getting off from the people that I'm working with or helping or supporting. So it's sort of like a reverb, right? Like their energy, their positivity kind of resonates, and that helps fill my cup to know that I maybe have in some small way, doesn't have to be a huge event. It's just if I've been able to touch them and create an experience of positivity in some small way, that helps, again, to keep my bucket full or my cup full. And I tell you, over the last 18 months, that's been a little challenging, especially in the HR field. But I definitely think that that's what drives me. I will say that I think that drive really, though, was supported, I think, from my parents, to be honest with you. So my parents divorced when I was right about junior high, middle school. I think they refer to middle school now, about 7th grade. But my dad worked as a manager in a manufacturing facility on the overnight shift for a very long time, 26 years, the whole entire time, pretty much right before I was born. And with my dad, I do remember when I went to his retirement party. He retired early. The unbelievably positive, kind words that people shared about him and their experience with him. He just genuinely and unconditionally cared about people, and it created this sense of loyalty from the staff, regardless of shift, if they worked first shift, second shift, third shift. And also when I was in college, I would go back and work my summers in the plant. I worked one summer, I did work the same shift he oversaw. And then the other couple of years I worked a different shift. And people would always come up to me and say, we weren't sure how you were going to be with being, the boss's daughter. But I just want you to know how special your dad is, and that he just listens to me and he doesn't judge. And that is one thing I will say, that my father's ability to just genuinely care unconditionally about people, I think I was fortunate that I think that it did rub off on me. So I think that that's a piece of it. And with my mom, she had the opportunity after she graduated high school to go work actually in Washington, D.C., and she chose not to. She had a job offer at the Pentagon, chose not to take it, and got married and raised a family. And so although she didn't have the chance to get her college degree, I think that my drive to work hard, stay focused, be dedicated, believe in yourself, right? That level of self-worth, I got from her. And it's unfortunate that sometimes you don't realize the gifts your parents give you until much later. And for me, I didn't realize the impact that she had on her colleagues, truly understand it until after her passing. It was for her memorial service that a lot of her colleagues had emailed us, the daughters, just stories and anecdotes of their experiences with her, and the stories that they shared about her, again, her genuineness for caring about people, and her dedication, not just to herself, but to others. Really just kind of reinforce that the role models that I had as a child growing up. But sometimes you just don't appreciate it until you're much older.
That's so true. Yeah. And I have found, like, through all these interviews, that it's mostly parents, like, not always, sometimes it's like a coach or, but it's something that our parents did. And I love hearing those stories of that drive, where it really stems from. And then how some people weren't the most obvious leaders or whatever, and then some that just kind of dropped right in their lap, or they evolved into it. And so this part is just so interesting to me anyway. So so what were what were the people that report to you say about you and your leadership style anyway?
Oh, that's really interesting. I part of me, I kind of would like to know too. I think that they would say that I'm very genuine. I'm very transparent. I do think I don't know as though they would be able to define it, or even how I think of it. I don't know as there's really one term. I think that the ingredients there is that I have a tendency to trust immediately. Like, I just give people 100% of my trust. I don't make them earn it. I truly believe that people, for the most part, want to come to work every day and do their very best. And if you can give them the tools and resources and support that they need to do that, So I think that that's an element of that. I think that they would say again that I am very transparent and that I do try to find a way to connect with them on a personal level, not overstepping, but definitely trying to find an additional way in which to connect. Because when you're able to do that, right, when you think about the fact that, you know, the best way to be able to support people and lead people is to really have an understanding of who they are as a whole being and not just who they are as an employee. I think that that's a real critical component. And sometimes I think leaders miss that, right?
Yeah, often. Yeah, often.
And I think to some degree, I think part of that has just been a little bit, I don't know if I'd say societal, but more like when I think about my experiences, right, especially in HR, it was always, you know, people need to leave their baggage at the door. Don't bring your home life to work. Don't ask personal questions because there's, you know, potential liability there. If somebody shares something you really shouldn't know. And that just doesn't seem realistic to me, especially now. I think that people can become even better, stronger, more effective leaders by really focusing on the whole human being and not just the employee that comes into work every day.
Yeah, and I was thinking about this other days. Someone was talking about, you know, so we look at the whole person leadership and intersectionality, and then now we just got so much more complication around that as we think about, you know, how we've changed so much. So like what we thought we knew even about more about the whole person prior to the pandemic is these are different people. So like they're not even the same people because their desires, their visions for themselves have completely changed during the pandemic. So at first it was like, yep, going to work, punch the clock, like do whatever this thing is. Tell me, the employer tells me when I have time off, tells me where I need to be working. After the, during, because we're not even after, like, I guess after the height and the down and up again, right? Then it was like, well, wait a second, I can get a lot of work done. And actually I like visited my friend in South Carolina and I visited my mother over here and I still get my work done and I was happy and like got to see family and I didn't have to wear my suit and I didn't have to drive my car. So all these realities that for us, they're like ding, 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 a pinball machine in our minds. Wow. We are just so different now. So the thing we thought we knew. So what does it mean? It means that we got to rediscover our people.
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely.
We have to rediscover. So it's crazy. Okay. So I'm curious. Go ahead. See if you had any comments related to that.
No, absolutely. I agree 100%, Heather. And I think that we are rediscovering, relearning many things, how we work, the way in which we interact, and the ways in which we can better support each other, right, in general. One of the other things I think that my team members would say that I support is that I assume positive intent. It's almost really innate in me. Although, well, I say that I'm not actually. I'll backstep that. I definitely have learned a lot over the years, right? So, but I do think to some degree that I really do honestly believe that people come forward with the best of intention for the most part. I'd want to say 98% of the time. I have been called naive, but you know what? My philosophy is I would rather live on the cusp of naivety as opposed to living in a world of cynicism, right? I can't look through a lens of being cynical all the time because there's just too many other important things going on, and that just would weigh down so heavily that I don't think that I could be my best self. So if there are times where people sometimes maybe think I'm living in a world of Pollyanna, then so be it.
I'm like, and now I know why you and I are like sisters from another mister or something. Because I know why we connect. Because I'm so that way. I'm like, I'm 50 and I could care less if I think like a 12-year-old. Like me, I want to be like seeing you through the eyes of a 12-year-old and just be like, yeah, like lots of possibilities. Like, oh, let's go have fun. Let's go like do these things. Like I'm just like you said, I'm gonna trust. I'm gonna soup on out of 10. I'm gonna be there for you. I don't know. I'm just gonna keep giving to you. I'm gonna pour my heart into you. And unless you really, obviously stab me somewhere,
Right,
right?
right,
Then you do have a problem, because there is a problem at that point, because it takes a
correct.
lot for me to get there, a lot. But when it
Yeah,
gets there, then I'm like, okay, now I know how I have to work with you now,
yeah, absolutely.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so for those who are listening, I already know they already know that you're wonderful. This is the part of the conversation where I want to ask you about a time when maybe you feel like you weren't the best leader. You didn't show up as your best self. What did
Mm.
that look like specifically in a story, if you can? And then what did you do to come out of that?
Yeah, this is kind of that love-hate portion of the podcast because but I love it because it does reinforce our humanness. But sometimes it's sort of like, ooh, I hate thinking about those times. And there are two in particular times, Heather, that really come to mind for me. And in both times there is a commonality, and it was frustration. And so in one instance, somebody had come to me in what I thought was like a really like not a difficult obstacle at all. And I, was working really long hours and I was really stressed trying to get a project done. And this poor person came into my office and said, we have a scheduling conflict with the training room, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do. Am I going to have to cancel this? And I literally was like, I don't understand what is so difficult about this, but I probably said a little sharper than that. And I kind of sat up and I was like, pulled up the computer and just was like, there's problem solved. And I didn't even really think about it until probably a couple days later. And I felt awful. I thought, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine having a leader or a manager who treated me or reacted in that way. So it wasn't so much treating, but it was more about a reaction. And the other instance, it was also similar. It was just a level of frustration. And what I really had learned from both of those particular instances is that I failed them. Like that situation was not about them at all. And that they were inept in their job, or that, how silly would they come to me with this issue when they couldn't have figured it out on their own? And I really, over the years, have really learned and accepted the fact that I totally failed them as their leader, not just in how I reacted, but more about I didn't give them the tools that they needed to really be successful. Had I spent some quality time with them and ensured that they had the resources, tools, and information and empowerment that they needed to do their job, that whole situation probably would have never even occurred. And I will say that is kind of a philosophy that I've really kind of adopted over the years, is that concept of extreme ownership. I don't know if that is, I know that there's a book, I did read a book that was out called Extreme Ownership. And it was written, one of the co-authors was a Navy SEAL. And it really is all about really kind of flipping the switch and reevaluating that when your teams fall short, who is really responsible for that? And is it them or is it you as the leader? And when you think about extreme ownership, it is similar to accountability, but for some reason over the years, accountability has kind of gotten this kind of negative feel to it. And so the extreme ownership, I think, makes it feel a little better. But it really, when I really reflect back and I think about those two situations, and I'm sure that there are many, many more, but those two in particular probably had the biggest impact on me and self-reflection and how I failed the people that I supported at that moment in time. Luckily, they are very forgiving, understanding people and accepted my apology and saw that I, took it seriously and took it to heart and ensured that I never did that same or reacted in that same similar way in my future work with them.
That's good. Well, I think that, that's all we can hope for, is that we give grace where grace is due and hope that it'll be given
Absolutely.
back to us. And, we always talk about this journey. This journey is not about perfection. It's not about just getting better every day, just every little day. And saying, oh, I see, like, I can see the incremental changes in myself. Like, I did this thing and I wouldn't have done that thing before.
Right.
And that's, I
Right.
think, the beauty in it is when we can see it. The awareness of the changes are key. I
Mhm.
always say, like, right, when you think about the idea of change, any kind of change or any kind of transformation, it's the awareness that there's a gap, there's a desire to change and get better, and there's a whole, like, stamina to see it through, because change is never overnight. It's never one and done. It's always like cyclical, or like it takes time. And I think the leaders that drive me bonkers are like, okay, well, we just did this survey, so, like, when are we going to see things change? It's like, but wait, what? It's going to take a lot longer than one survey cycle. It's going to take a lot of action, a lot of communication. It's going to take a lot. You're going to be seeing this in like year 2 or 3. So just hang on tight. Right?
Yeah.
Hang
Yeah.
on tight. Oh my gosh. Okay, so we've reached now the place in the podcast where you get to turn and ask me, Heather, the host of this show,
Good.
a question.
Good.
Da, 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 da. What might
Good.
that be?
So my question for you, Heather, is when you think about all of the leaders that you've had the opportunity to have a conversation with, so many of them have shared such incredible, like, these little nuggets of information, that, like, these key takeaways. What has maybe been, we'll leave it to 2. What has been maybe the top 2 pieces of feedback or nuggets that somebody has shared with you that you've actually taken and was able to maybe adapt it and use it in your leadership journey?
I would say the self-care part. Self-care is a big one, and it's one I have to continue to recommit to, and I'm recommitting weekly. I'm just gonna be honest. It's like a weekly thing. This is not like a yearly thing. This is like so that's the first. And self-care obviously shows itself up in self-leadership. But it's a big one, and it's become so big lately, right? I think about the first few couple months for sure of the pandemic, and it was quarantine, and we were all just like, what the? And I was eating so many chocolate chip cookies and drinking so much wine, and I was like, this is I got like put on 5 pounds, I dropped 5 pounds, put on 5 pounds, and I'm back up 10. It's just crazy. It's just been like, so a big struggle. Self-care from a physical and mental standpoint has been big. And then I would say the other thing that I would have to say, this idea of just like practicing what I preach, because I preach a lot. Like, you're right. It's like, yeah. So I think like leaders are like, yeah, don't, do this, don't do that, whatever that is. And it's like, but it's like being the embodiment of the thing that you're preaching. So that level of congruency that exists between what I say I value and who I say I am. It's authenticity. Is it really authentic? Is it genuine? So I think though, like, those are the 2 things I focus on, 2 things I wouldn't say I struggle as much with the second as I do the first, but I am very hyper focused because I do preach, like, speak, write, like, all the stuff I do. I have a podcast on it. And then if I all of a sudden I'm not listening, or someone feels like poop because I just did something to them, I'm like, uh-oh, like you were saying, that didn't feel so good. Like, that was not me. So I need to go make that right. And then it's like you were saying, like, if I don't have the time, or I feel like I'm frustrated, or I feel like I'm overextended, am I still going to show up as that person? Is it okay for me not to show up as that person 100% of the time? The answer is yes. I have to give myself grace if I expect to give it to others, So I would say those would be the 2 things that would be the things I work at. And when I listen to people, I kind of take whatever practices they have, and in those areas, like, yep, I'm going to start doing those things.
Yeah. And that's so true. That I agree with you wholeheartedly. The whole self-care piece of it is it's so interesting because it's probably the most difficult. Especially, I know for me, I very much have always been kind of the caregiver, peacemaker. Some of that's probably in my, my the order in which I was birthed, right, as the middle child, and always trying to put others first and making sure that they have what they need. And I do think that, you know, we have a tendency to always put our own self needs last. And then eventually at some point you just don't do it because you're exhausted from everything else that you're trying to do.
I always find though, like in that situation when I'm not doing it, I end up getting pissed at people around me, because then I'm starting, in my mind, I'm blaming them for them taking up more of my time. I have 4 kids and I have a very busy business life. And so I'm just like, and then I start to go, I'm just like, you just asked me to do another thing. You expect me, how much more do you expect me to do? You know, it's like, wait a second, Heather, smack yourself a little bit. You control what you say yes to, and you control how much you focus on you first. Like, so it's like, you know, it really does require us as leaders of in our home, our community, our work, wherever, it requires us to kind of give ourselves, like, you know, some different medicine and smack ourselves a little bit and say, wait a second. This is you. Don't be mad at the other person for asking you for, it's up to you to say no to him.
Yeah, you know, and I think about that too, Heather, when, you know, I think about it, especially in those 2 situations where, you know, I just was so frustrated and stressed, that acknowledging the fact that I am human, and had I even just said to them, you know what, I understand that, you know, this is a barrier right at the moment, but I just don't feel like I am right now is the right time for me to help you with this. But if you can give me 15 minutes, I am happy to circle back with you, and we will definitely get this figured out. Now, I would say that now, but I didn't say that 15 years ago. And I think that that's just a part of the leadership journey that people have to take. And a lot of it, at least for me, like when I think about my leadership style, right, I really think about, it's really just been a learning curve, right? And having the opportunity to work with many different leaders. I've worked with some incredible, stellar leaders that I have learned more than I probably could have learned from with a 4-year degree or a 6-year degree. But I've also had some not great leaders, and you learn, you observe, you watch, you implement things in which you see that seem to work. And that's really kind of what helps you develop and grow. You find ways to adapt what you have seen role model that have had a positive impact, and you add them to your toolkit, right? And you tap into that toolkit when you can, and you pull out those tools out and use them to the best that you can. You know, and I'd like to think that I'm still, you know, got a ways to go on my journey, and just hope to get better every time and every day.
That's all we can do.
Yeah,
that's all we can do, is just get better every time. If you're committed to that, because I mean, a lot of people aren't committed to it, but the fact that, you know, you are committed and you put in the work, because it is action, right? You put in the work to get there. It's all that really matters. So I am curious, for those who are listening, this is, you know, getting these the pearls of wisdom, the couple things that you'd want to leave. What might be the things that might need to get people through the week, or through their leadership, or through this day? What might be a couple pearls of wisdom you give them?
So one of the things that I absolutely, this was shared with me, I cannot take credit for it. This was shared with me probably 12 years ago with a really great coworker that I worked with. And it's these 3 small little tidbits of kind of a phrase. And it's, say what you mean what you say, but never say it mean. And I have used that expression in work that I've done with other leaders in organizations and other employees or team members. And it has been so impactful in how we, our leaders, communicate, right? Like, if you genuinely care and you are transparent, there's a way in which you can communicate even the most difficult conversations or feedback that you have to give. But if you do it in a way that is kind, it can work. So say what you mean what you say, never say it mean. The other piece that I would say is to always stay curious. And feed that curiosity as much as you possibly can, and get to know people, like really know people, get to know the people that work beside you, work, whether they work for you, or just around you, and find a way to connect, if at all possible. And genuinely, if you can, genuinely care. I think that there's a difference between caring and genuinely caring. When I think about myself as a leader early on in my career, I cared. I definitely think that I cared. I'm a kind person in general, but did I genuinely care? Probably not to the level that I could have to have had a larger impact, right, on someone. A very small example, and it's the tiniest thing. When I started working here in my new role, I didn't know anybody. I was brand new, and there wasn't a lot of people here in the office, and quite a few people are still working from home at this point in time. But every morning I'd walk in and I would just say good morning. Like as I walked by the cubicles, I'd be like, good morning, Rose, good morning, Josh. How you doing today? Weather's great, weather's bad. And about a week later, one of the individuals that I always walked by, she stopped and she said, I just wanted to thank you. And I was like, oh, okay, for what? And she said, just for you saying good morning every morning when you come in, and just acknowledging that we're here, and you kind of set the tone and you set the mood. And I almost didn't know what to say. I probably got a little red face because I just thought it is something I don't even necessarily think about. Yeah. I just genuinely want to wish people a good morning and a good day. And when I think about other leaders being able to really have an impact, I think about that one small little thing that you can do that is so easy. And I've seen leaders, especially, our some executive leaders, right, who will come down or go to a certain area of the building because they need to talk to somebody, and just talk to that one particular person and then walk by the rest of everybody else, and not,
you're a number.
Hi,
you're not
how's
important.
It going? Thanks for being here. You're doing a great job. It is such an easy thing to do that can have such a huge impact on engagement. And it's a miss. It's a miss that happens. And I get, right, that people have incredible things on their plates and their bandwidth is stretched beyond capacity and they're focused. But I'm telling you, the smallest thing could make the biggest difference for anybody. And when I think about thinking of our team members or our employees as whole human beings, for some people, when they come to work every day, that's like the best part of their day.
Yeah.
Right? We don't really understand what happens outside of the four walls that we work in. And for some of our people, they don't even get that because they're working from home. So, my goal is to make sure that people, when they come here, that they have the best experience they possibly can in the time that we have together. And really, that's really kind of what caring leadership is all about to me.
Yeah, I love that so much. Oh, thank you so much for ending on that. I'm like, now I'm in like, I need some tea and some crumpets. I'm not sure, but something that that was awesome. Listen, for those who have listened to my conversation with Barbara and you really enjoyed it, please do make sure you share it far and wide. The sharing is what helps move us up and up and up the rankings, which we are, by the way, moving up. So that's kind of cool after this many years. Also, don't forget to write the 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen, because again, that's another thing. The algorithm just starts to promote things that are high and have lots of reviews to it. So you help other people get this content. And there's something special here. When you get a leader that can tell that they are, they talk to you about times when they weren't so great and they're vulnerable enough to do that. You don't really find leadership podcasts that do that. So thank you for filling me up today, dear Barbara.
Oh, well, thank you for having me again. It's been an honor. And I so appreciate you and all the work that you do, and look forward to continuing to learn right alongside with you.
I love that. Thanks everybody for listening, and thanks for joining the Leadership of the Heart podcast. Be well.